Hello, everyone. My name is Harish Hemmige, and I'm a managing director and partner in BCG's public sector practice. We are thrilled to be part of the Atlantic Festival. Today, I'm joined by BCG's North America Chair, Sharon Marcil. Sharon has led and grown several BCG businesses, including our public sector and consumer practices, in addition to a number of executive leadership roles. Sharon, it's great to see you today in BCG's DC office.
Yeah, Harish, it's great to see you. And thanks so much for hosting this very important conversation with the Atlantic. Before we jump in, I wanted to share a fun tidbit from both Harish and me, which is BCG is actually relocating our DC office. And so we're moving downtown right next to Metro Center. We'll be there soon and look forward to hosting all of you in our office.
You have had the privilege to have experience both on the commercial sector as well as leading major public sector programs. How have citizens' expectations evolved for what they want from the public sector?
Yeah, it's a great question, Harish. I think the expectations have continued to increase. So whether you're an employee in a private sector corporation, or you're working for the federal government or a state government, I think all of those constituents are holding their leaders more accountable. And I actually think that's quite good and quite appropriate. And so when you think about connection and you think about motivating the workforce, I think there are two key things to keep in mind, which you know well: trust and purpose. And look, Americans are polled often, and what's revealed in the polls is that they are exhibiting low trust in many of their elected officials, which is too bad. But I think what is great is in fact, what you see every day on the ground is very high trust in terms of the government institutions. So when you look at people every day, what are they doing? They're going to restaurants for their food. They're going to pharmacies to pick up their medicine. They're flying, a lot of flights over the summer, Harish. And all of that is enabled by our federal institutions. So whether it's the FAA in terms of regulating air traffic, or the FDA that ensures that our medications are efficacious and safe, or whether it's the FDA that makes sure that our food is well taken care of. When the rubber meets the road, our citizens actually are demonstrating real trust in our governmental institutions. And it's really interesting. That trust is reflected in the federal workforce. And so we do a research study every year with the Partnership for Public Service. And one of the things that is consistently true when you ask federal employees about their organizations, the trust score is enormously high. In fact, within agencies, the trust and the belief in mission and the belief in purpose outscores not all, but most private sector institutions. And that's so important in terms of both the what and the why.
It's such a great reminder, Sharon. And I love how you teed it up with the mission being really around the what, the purpose being the why. And one thing I would add is the how is really about culture. Culture is how you codify those behaviors in the organization from the center to the field to really determine how an organization operates and gets things done and delivers against that mission and delivers against that purpose of why they exist. And BCG research has shown culture can have a direct impact on performance. Companies with strong cultures and well-defined cultures outperform across metrics from customer satisfaction, employee retention, as well as shareholder returns.
There was probably a period of time when people thought this notion of culture was something that's soft, but it's really not soft. It's measurable and it's hard. And when we talk about culture at BCG, sometimes we say it's about who you hire, who you fire, who you promote, what you celebrate. All of these things go straight at culture. And I think that there's when I've worked with great leaders, whether it's been CEOs or leaders of agencies, there's a few things that they've done to actually influence culture, and maybe I'll talk a second about that. First, they've listened to their people. Before they put their 100-day plan out there, they do listening sessions. They listen to their people. They build that trust. They start to engage, whether it's focus groups or town halls or all of the above. So that's one thing I think you can do to actually start to get at this notion of culture. The second thing is modeling new behaviors. So if you want to set a culture which says everyone needs to be responsive to feedback, then you have to be responsive to feedback. If you want people to take risks, then you actually have to take calculated risks. If you want people to push decision-making down and empower others, then you have to demonstrate that. So I think whether that's in the private or public sector, it's true.
What's another element of the strategy where public and private sector can learn from each other?
I think it's resilience, honestly. I think it's resilience. So, whether you're a private sector company or a public sector institutions, what's certain about the future is it's going to be uncertain. So whether it's geopolitical uncertainty or whether it's domestic uncertainty, there's a whole range of uncertainty that I don't need to list and you all know about. But I think what's critical is being able to weather that uncertainty. And I have a colleague I deeply respect, Martin Reeves, who's written a lot about this, and he's done some myth busting in terms of resilience. And one of the myths is that resilience is synonymous with risk mitigation. And I think that's a part of it. There is a risk mitigation component, but it also is enabling the upside and enabling competitive advantage to organizations that are coming out of unstable periods. So I think it's both.
One additional myth we've observed is leaders sometimes thinking crises happen so infrequently, it's not worth investing against, they'll just deal with it when it comes. And the reality is that the world has become so increasingly volatile that not having a resilient plan to be able to respond to those shocks, be it pandemics, geopolitical conflict, climate change, cyber, industry-specific disruptions, other unpredicted challenges, like you'll never be able to actually come out and excel if you don't actually have a plan and a resilient organization to be able to deal with it. The real question though, Sharon, how can organizations actually build a resilient organization?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it really it is really dependent on how you're able to change an organization, right? Because you just don't go from being not resilient to resilient. So it's really that change journey. So maybe I can touch on that for a second, Harish. As I've worked with, leaders in governmental agencies or leaders in the private sector, there's a few components of getting to resilience and on that change journey that are really important. And so let me discuss those. The first is head, the second is heart, and the third is hands, with heart being at the center because it is the most important. So let me talk a little bit about that. So if I say to you, Harish, we have to change this organization, we have to be more resilient, the question you're going to ask is why? So I need to put together a fact base. Why do we need to change? And it's because of competitive behavior. It's because of not meeting the needs of our customers. It's because of a whole lot of things. But I can put together that fact base to convince you in your head that you need to change. Then the second piece is, well, if you have the fact base and you don't do anything, then you don't change anything. So you need the hands. And the hands are going to put together the work plan and the metrics and the tracking, and that all that work needs to get done to actually make something change. So that's the hands. And then I think the most important part is the heart, because you might believe, yes, I believe Sharon's fact base. You might actually see the work plan and even believe the metrics are real. But if I don't capture your heart that you really believe this change is the best thing for you, for your colleagues, for the organization, for your customers, then I've lost the battle. And so really in thinking about establishing a more resilient organization and going on that change journey, it's about hands, heart, and head.
Yeah, those lessons certainly are applicable across both public and private sector organizations. And as we think about how they need to collectively build resilience for society more broadly, COVID-19 pandemic made it so clear that we do not neither operates in a vacuum. Business cannot succeed as society fails. And resilience is really about integrated systems, not individual systems like individual companies or business units or agencies operating in silos. It's really about how those come together. And business is now being asked to play a much larger role than it traditionally has of the traditional corporate boundaries to be able to deliver against that. Leaders need to look to reduce volatility and fragility of the systems, to enable the societies that they depend on to be successful. Social fabric, things like reducing polarization, optimizing for both societal and business value, and really reimagining what the business model looks like for sustainability.
Harish, I think that's perhaps the most important point for us to remember as we speak to this super important audience at the Atlantic. It's going to take all sectors and leaders across the board to really commit to this change because we have some fundamental challenges ahead of us, whether it's responsible AI or whether it's climate change, and it's going to require a collaboration of leaders in the private sector, in the public sector, and across the board to actually lean into these issues and make change happen.
Sharon, it was so great to have you. Thank you for your time. And for those watching, please visit bcg.com to learn more. Thank you again.